Hello and welcome. So today we are having a third video in the series of Internal Audit Practitioner, and we are trying to cover Domain 3 in this video. So let's start with asking some interesting questions from the Domain 3, and then we'll get off to a start and understand all the objectives and the explanations thereof. What are the engagement objectives and scope? What to consider when planning an engagement? What is the importance of appropriate resource allocation? How to develop an engagement scope in relation to its objectives? And what are the key risks and controls in a payroll function? So let's refresh ourselves on the IAP syllabus and the 5 domains first, and then we'll get off to a start specifically for domain 3. So first domain is internal audit attributes, 5 objectives covered by standard series 1000 and having the course coverage of 20%. The second is nature of work, 4 objectives, 2100 series having a coverage of 20%. Domain 3, which we are covering now, engagement planning, 5 objectives, 2200 series, 23% of the score coverage, the scope coverage. And the fourth domain is engagement communication, 3 objectives, 2400 is the series of standards, 12% is the coverage. And domain 5 is the engagement work, 6 objectives, 2300 series and 25% of the scope coverage. So overall 23 objectives. So today we are covering domain 3. Please refer to my channel Audit Strategy. Don't forget to subscribe, because I will be giving a lot of references for the videos already available on that channel. So domain 3 basically covers the engagement planning, the standard 2200, which is about engagement planning, 2201 planning consideration, and 2210 engagement objective. So you can refer back to my videos. Then there are 2220 engagement scope, 2230 engagement resource allocation, and 2240 is engagement work program. So let's read the 5 objectives of the domain 3 first, and then one by one we'll try to double click and get more detail and understanding of these objectives. Number 1 is identify relevant information. For example, review previous audit reports and data, conduct walkthroughs and interviews, and perform observations as part of a preliminary survey of the engagement area. Define engagement objectives, evaluation criteria, and scope of the engagement to assure identification of key risks and controls. Number 3 is describe checklist and risk and controls questionnaires as part of a preliminary survey of the engagement area. The number 4 is identify a detailed risk assessment of each audit area, including evaluating and prioritizing risk and control factors. And number 5 is recognize engagement procedures and the engagement work program, including level of resources needed. So now we are covering the first objective of domain 3. The first objective is identify relevant information, like review the previous audit reports and data, conduct walkthroughs and interviews, perform observations as part of preliminary survey of the engagement area. So you can refer back to the videos which I've already given in the previous slides and understand the theoretical aspect and the requirement of the standard. We'll keep it more practical perspective in this video, so you can understand that how it is done on the practically when you work for the engagement planning. So you check the previous audits conducted or reviews conducted, check the reports, whether it is by the internal auditor, by the external auditor, or some regulators audits. You need to see the status of audits. Raise in the previous reports the findings, the status of findings which are open, closed, and process, high risk findings. You can identify critical issues which are still open or open risk. You can review changes in the function or in the organization having an impact on the function. Maybe reporting line is changed. Maybe because of those changes, the function or the process is exposed to new risk. For example, if it is going towards the automation, or there is a new hiring or new section created within the function, new job role for the function, changes in the reporting lines, etc. You can obtain current SOPs of the function and list down the changes from the previous version, so you can understand the scope or assess the scope of those changes. So the key purpose of this preliminary survey is to consider all previously reported findings, open risk, new risk, key changes which may have an impact on the function and the process you are going to audit. So the second objective of domain 3 is define engagement objectives, evaluation criteria, and the scope of the engagement to assure identification of key risk and controls. So I'll just keep an example of payroll audit here, so you can understand how the engagement objectives are created and how the engagement scope is being created in order to deliver and execute the audit moving forward. So if you see the high level primary objectives for the payroll audit is to ensure accuracy and completeness of the payroll transactions. Number 2 is verify compliance with relevant policies, laws, regulations. You can identify and correct any errors, discrepancies or potential fraud. Okay, when you say correct, does not mean that auditor has to correct, but it is identifying and the management has to implement those rectifications under the supervision and maybe after getting an endorsement from the audit. And number 4 is to ensure if segregation of duties is implemented appropriately. So we saw the high level objectives. Now we'll see the specific objectives and we'll go into further detail. To review payroll processing procedures and controls, for example, get the current policies and SOPs. To test payroll transactions for accuracy and authorization. To verify employee data, including salaries, benefits, deductions. You can work on a sample or overall for a specific month or another period. You can review the reconciliation from month to month, number of employees, opening, closing, additions, resignations, terminations, bonus, increments, promotions, change in titles, allowances, deductions, attendance, leaves, record, and any other area which is having an impact and changing the payroll in some manner, whether it's a change of figure, it's change of number, or if it's a change of narration or title, you need to consider that as well. Then to evaluate the compliance with tax laws, labor laws, regulatory requirements, assess the internal controls over payroll processing and reporting, for example, ghost employees. Identify opportunities to process improvements and efficiency gains. Determine the effectiveness of payroll related internal controls. So getting an understanding from the engagement objectives will develop an engagement scope for the payroll audit. So it can be segregated into different sections, for example, payroll processes. So you can see the payroll processing and calculation, employee data management, for example, new hires or terminations, etc. You can see the benefits, administration, for example, health insurance, retirement plans, the deductions and withholdings, for example, taxes or garnishments or any other things, allowances, payroll tax compliance. You can see the payroll transactions, for example, salary and wage payments, bonuses, incentives, overtime, holiday pay, leave accruals, usage, garnishments and deductions. You can see the internal controls like segregation of duties, authorization and approval processes, payroll reconciliations and verifications, and access controls and security. Payroll related systems, for example, payroll software and hardware, time and attendance system, HR information system, and the benefits administration systems. And then compliance, the labor laws, tax laws, federal, state, local laws, regulatory requirements, and company policies and procedures. There are many other areas you can also include in the scope, for example, the audit period, the audit team which is working on that, the timelines given, and as well as the limitations also can be mentioned in your audit scope. So let's move forward in domain 3 and have a look at the objective 3 and 4. Describe checklist and risk and control questionnaires as part of a preliminary survey of the engagement area. And objective 4 is identify detailed risk assessment of each audit area, including evaluating and prioritizing risk and control factors. So the risk in the payroll audit, as we are taking the example of payroll audit, can be number one, error or fraud, which is inaccurate or fraudulent payroll transactions. Number two is non-compliance, violations of labor laws, tax laws, or regulatory requirements. Maybe tax sales, maybe tax part, income tax deduction also, withholding tax also comes in that. Unauthorized access, unauthorized changes to payroll data or transaction, for example, ghost employees, unapproved changes, inefficient processes, inefficient payroll processing leading to wasted resources, data breach, unauthorized disclosure of sensitive employee data. So as we have segregated the controls in three areas, the preventive, retractive and corrective controls. So for the payroll audit also, we are explaining the same controls, preventive, retractive and corrective controls. So you can get a better understanding from that. The preventive controls, so segregation of duties. So separating payroll processing, approval and reconciliation task. Authorization and approval require authorized signatories for payroll changes. Payroll policy and procedures, establish clear policies and procedures. Regular audits, conduct regular payroll audits. So you can say that regular audit or audit is not a preventive control. Yes, the audit is basically a post audit sort of things. You can say that it is a detective control. But when you say regular audits, means that if there is a perception of conducting regular audit, means that the regular audits creates deterrence for any fraudulent activity. So if you are monitoring and reviewing again and again an area on frequent basis, so that increases the deterrence and that reduces the possibility of any frauds or any other manipulation in that. So that is why it is also considered as a preventive control. So employee verification, verify employee identities and bank accounts. Detective controls, reconciliations, regularly reconcile payroll transactions. Transaction testing, test payroll transactions for accuracy. Anomaly detection, for example, identify unusual payroll activity. Audit trails, maintain detailed audit trails. Management reviews, regular management review of payroll reports. Then corrective controls, for example, corrective action, take prompt corrective action on errors or irregularities. Employee communication, communicate payroll changes to employees. Process improvement, implement process improvements. Training, provide regular payroll trainings. And disciplinary action, take disciplinary action to the non-compliances. So the fifth objective is to recognize the engagement procedures and engagement work program, including level of resources needed. So for payroll audit, if you see the review of payroll policies and procedures, payroll transaction accuracy testing, payroll reconciliation, conduct employee interviews and surveys, analyze payroll data and transactions, and perform testing and sampling, and evaluate internal controls and segregation of duties. And an important part is the level of resources needed. So the hiring and recruitment is always important whether you are hiring for any other function or for the payroll section, because the competent and ethical resource, which is what you have to test at the time of hiring and get the background checks done and all the the verification part of employees which has to be done, should be done timely, so that you can get a better resource, a good resource, and a competent and with the high integrity, so that you can have confidence in that area. So here I am giving you a sample work program relevance to the payroll audit, and just get an understanding of this and the different sections of this work program, and let's go through these. So you can see that on the top of that work program is mentioned the audit name, the audit period, company name, and were prepared by whom and approved by the Chief Audit Executive. If there is a bigger department reporting structure, they can be reviewed by in between, and the date of creation of this work program. You can start with mentioning your audit objectives, the high level objectives and the audit scope. You can put a detail on that as well, like we have the specific detailed objectives. Then you have the audit procedures, again classified in the segments, like for example, for payroll, for planning and preparation, what audit procedures you have to follow, the payroll transaction testing, payroll reconciliation, employee verification, compliance review, internal controls, reporting and follow-up. Then the audit tests are mentioned, audit tools like payroll software is there, spreadsheets are there, audit software. If you're using ACL, IDEA or any other software, you can mention there, and document management tool as well. Audit timelines, audit team which is actually working on this audit, what are your deliverables, then again the best practices also you can add. Even I mentioned earlier that you can add your limitations. Again, this is one sample, this is not all inclusive, this is not, I can say that is the only way of doing it. You can develop and improve it in a different way. For example, your audit procedures can be more detailed, more comprehensive. It can be in the form of a checklist of your steps of working. Maybe from the same work program you can develop another sub work program for the juniors, so they can deliver on one or two or second segment, where you can give them more details and more step-by-step process of delivering the same work program. So this concludes our domain 3. Hopefully this would have helped you in moving forward in building your understanding of the internal auditing standards and to cover your syllabus for the internal audit practitioner. Please keep liking my channel, subscribe the channel and share my videos onwards so the other students can get benefit of that. I'm giving my email address. You can get coaching and guidance, and you can approach me as an individual or as a group, and hopefully this will be helpful for you. Or you can ask any queries, any specific questions, and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible, and hopefully it will be you will get benefit from this connection as well. Thank you so much, and keep watching.